recidivism in the prison, where we talk about moving prisoners back into a situation on leaving the prison, skilled, trained vocationally, better aptitude, and having the ability on exiting the prison to get into normal, lawful economic activities to support, to provide for themselves and for their families. And so this is a big mission with the prison system, and it is one which we think that is, of course, necessary at this time, perhaps long in coming, in relation to what is needed in transforming the prison system and reducing repeat offenses amongst our people. The recidivism rate at this time is some 9.55%, the average over the last 10 years. We look forward to reducing this even further. We did have a difficulty when we had a number of escapes, tragic in the finality of them. The last one resulted in much more, like, I don't want to call it collateral damage, but the escaped prisoner inflicted deaths on an older couple. And a lot of effort was undertaken by the services in relation to the recapture. But the important issue is that we work and secure them, and to make sure that while they are rightfully in prison, that they would prefer to stay them and to partake in the vocational, rehabilitation, agricultural, and other activities which are being undertaken by the prisons. I think we had this morning 2,032 persons incarcerated. It's a 4% reduction over the previous year. The ladies are some 69 ladies are in the prison system. And I would say they are far way better, much behaved than the males. And we're happy that percentage-wise, the number of females in the prison is much lower than in other places. And that they take a great part and pleasure in working at issues of rehabilitation and supporting the prison system. One of the things which we have been speaking about in the prison system is a Fresh Start project and program. And that the intention is, one, that if you work at particular activities in the prison related to your rehabilitation, you will be paid. And secondly, is if that you're clearly upskilled, vocationally or otherwise. So if you have skills in mechanics, electrical, construction, vehicle repair, body work, and all of those things, that on leaving the prison, you will be given the full kit to go out and to start work by yourself or with your partners in lawful activity. And so we hold great value in the number of persons who are showing interest in this project. We hope to be able to at least allow for 20 such occurrences on a monthly basis as a start in relation to the Fresh Start program and project. As was said, these areas by themselves, the prison, the police, the fire, and all of these areas are specialized areas, highly specialized areas. And I don't think I could have the time here today. I'll be talking for a long time if I were to attempt to go through these areas, but the agencies could be contacted directly in relation to the specific successes and projects. I might have made a slight oversight in relation to the traffic situation on our roads. We are not unfortunately, but we are at a position where we have seen a tremendous increase in the number of vehicles on the road over the last 5 or so years. There's a near doubling of cars, 60%, I believe, of trucks. As one minister said, that the whole country appears to be a construction site. Minister Nanlal was saying that at one point. We're under the challenge of making everyone safe in relation to the traffic situation. We have had 14% decrease in traffic deaths last year compared to the previous year. Every death is a loss, and specifically for the families concerned and those who are injured, there is an intention to go to new legislation beyond the digitalizing of the infrastructure on the roads, the cameras, and so on, the body cameras with the policemen in their interactions. But we have to make changes in legislation in relation to the number of what are called ticketable offenses. We have to make changes in relation to the inspection of vehicles, whether it could also be done by private persons, as in some other countries. We're looking at having a traffic regulation consultancy service put in place to give a clear world standard assessment of what we need to do and to cost it, the projects and the activities in relation to improving the challenges in relation to traffic and transport. These are, of course, developmental challenges. We are speaking with the Brazilians in relation to put in place international road transport agreement, which will see large buses coming all the way right through from Manaus, Boa Vista, Bonfim into Guyana and going the other way. The completion of the Mabura Road, and in a year or two, perhaps the bridge over the Copacabana and the Essequibo will see a tremendous movement of traffic into the country, and we have to manage international traffic for export and import, and also we have to deal with our own idiosyncrasies in relation to how we operate on the road, and the challenges and the disrespect in too many cases the traffic police face on the road and all police. So a big effort has to be made in relation to traffic. We have the imperatives, as I said before, by 2030 in reducing road deaths for the UN decade of road traffic safety. By one half, we envisage that there should be no more than 65 persons dying on the road by 2030 on an annual basis. I think our rate per 100,000 people is 26 persons dying, but surprisingly, if we go to Trinidad, it's 7 per 100,000 of population. And so we have to go to Trinidad to learn what they are doing to see how we could alias much of what they are doing and alias their successes. So the intention this year is again make the effort to reduce traffic fatalities below 100. That we push again to give out free safety helmets to young people, young men. You see them on the road on the mopeds and motorcycles, and they're the ones who are most at risk and the most who are dying. And to support the police force, the traffic department, and particularly we're seeing, with all the activities we're doing, but particularly with road traffic management, bringing in the mantra of doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. At all levels of our society and country, we have to encourage people to do the right thing with all of the things that we do which imperil our security and our safety. And the ministry intends to, just soon, it was postponed, launch out the Doing the Right Thing program, first for traffic, but then rolling out into all other areas in respect of the things we are responsible for. I will take this opportunity in any event, since the media is here, of course, to encourage your full participation and support in relation to this effort. It is critically important to each and every one of us, and I'm sure that you would know of someone or some incident or some happenstance where there was loss of life, injury, destruction, damage to vehicles, and stress and expenses in relation to the question of our traffic management, and where we worry for ourselves, how can we do this better? So that is a significant challenge for us, but that it is one where everyone has to be involved in. If I may speak briefly on the question of the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, there was indeed a dramatic finding, discovery, recovery, and destruction by the unit of some 6,000 kilograms of cocaine, well, narcotics of all kinds. Cocaine was 5,094.67 kilograms, much of it the big boss in the Northwest, not too far from Matthews Ridge. And for cannabis, 1,643.45 kilograms, and methamphetamines, 92 grams. So we've had a dramatic increase in the cocaine seizures and also in relation to the work against drug trafficking, drug growing, the cannabis. As I said, the results so far we have seen arriving in the prisons, a number of persons who have been involved in relation to the question of cocaine and marijuana trafficking. I think a number of Brazilian pilots are in the facility. You may recall that we did seize or destroy a number of planes discovered between the police and the canoe, and that this is the question that we pose to our international partners too. How can they help us to work on issues of demand reduction? The demand is not in Guyana for cocaine or for marijuana, ganja, in the quantities which are being produced in some places. The demand is elsewhere. Whether the marijuana is for the tourist trade in the Caribbean islands and the narcotics which are going on to North America, Europe, through Africa and other places and further afield, we are afflicted by this demand. And we'd like to get more support. While there's a lot of support in terms of training and information and visits and conferences, we would like to see more physical support. We would like to see support in relation to radar coverage. We'd like to see more support to the police and the canoe and related in relation to vehicles and planes and the other specialized testing equipment in relation to the question of drugs. In fact, we've been demanding more and more for that support because the question of drugs both at the level of the police and the canoe, and the fact that firearms are associated with their activities is one of the most difficult and onerous criminal activity areas for us. And I would dare say that the fact that we are a transit country, mostly by flyovers going to the east in planes. I understand that there was on the Suriname-Guyana border recently, there was a crash of a plane with 500 or whatever kilograms of cocaine, and 2 of those pilots were killed. But the planes are flying over, not landing in Guyana. Not anymore, since we seized a lot of planes and destroyed them. But our activism cannot be more helped unless we have the capability, in partnership with neighboring countries, to deny overflight, deny the passage of these submersible, semi-submersible vessels in the maritime sphere. And indeed, we do have, I think, 1 or 2 submersibles which were seized in the Northwest by the police. Commissioner of Police, I think you and the Director Kano should put them in a place where people could go and inspect them so that people see that this is a real problem and a real thing, that we have at least 2 submersibles and I think 1 or 2 go-fast boats. It's an onerous and difficult task, and is one in which at any moment could break out into firefights. And we don't want to be putting our people at more risk in relation to the question of drugs, not without having the adequate resources and properly trained people and intelligence sharing to make sure that this doesn't get more out of hand. The If I may go quickly to fire, we have had still ongoing challenges in relation to fire. We have experienced very dry season last year, really for the last 2 years following. We still have a trend of malicious setting of fires, and which we're seeing now. We have to identify clearly the arson attempts or occurrence of arson that we, of course, in response to the challenges we had on all over the country, on the coast in relation to wildfires. California is having its own experience now, tragically. But for us, while there has been a reduction in loss of life, we've had 21 deaths in relation to fire for 2024, which is a 54% decrease over the previous year, and the previous year, 2023, was a major tragedy. But we see that the response has to be countrywide, where people are living. We've had a lot of loss of farmlands and forestry lands in the grass fires on the coast and in the Rupununi savannas around Karasaba and Mokomoka and going up on the escarpment. And we, beyond the loss of life otherwise, the response has been to, of course, bringing in the 40 new units with auxiliary manning to be accomplished, which was recently done at the Guyana Fire Service headquarters. So the volunteer and the auxiliary firefighting modes will be established with that. For most house fires, we point to the lack of fire prevention awareness. We support the issuance, and we intend to give out a number of smoke and fire alarms. And there's a discussion ongoing in respect of fireballs and getting people to use fireballs and be aware of its use. But the biggest thing is awareness. The biggest thing is awareness, and this is why the Guyana Fire Service has been out and about doing its awareness lectures and interventions and demonstrations at schools and facilities and other places. We know that the number of vehicles damaged by fires are much more, 69 destroyed actually by fire. There's a 68% increase in relation to that. A number of these instances have been malicious or arson. We have to relate to the insurance companies and to the specialized police investigators in relation to the arson questions. But two, we have to get the support from the private sector in relation to their vested interest in relation to questions of fire. The loss of buildings, and also in relation to traffic. Now, the private sector itself has natural vested interests. If you sell cars, if you sell house insurance, if you put up monies in mortgages for buildings and so on, the effort should also be relatable to what the agencies do, how we can collaborate in relation to bringing a culture of safety, fire prevention, and awareness. We note that there have been a number of issues in terms of the setting of fires. We have had last year 2,226 deliberate settings of fires. And then there are malicious settings of fires, 185%, an increase. And then, of course, we have the problem of persons who seem to take vicarious joy into calling up the fire service or the ambulance service and saying, there's a fire on. And when they rush out there and use up their adrenaline, there's nothing that is going on, but they would have put at risk themselves, but the persons who are on the road going about their normal business while they're trying to get to what is purported to be a very serious incident. And it's extremely risky. And there indeed have been a number of incidents in relation to these issues. So while we train our drivers, including our ambulance drivers, and I point out that the ambulance service has done sterling service in relation to the questions of responding to persons who need help. They transported 5,546 persons in relation to calls for service. Unfortunately, 764 of those calls were for persons who were already dead. A number of these calls were canceled, 363, which is what we talk about. There were some not medical necessary. And of course, there were false calls, which we will follow up on. But I want to thank the Guyana Fire Service too, and I keep saying they got to turn to the rescue service, that we have issues in relation to floods, that we have issues in relation to rescuing people who may be trapped somewhere and where a vehicle may not go. And we've had these experiences, that we should be able to now that we're dealing with the issues of fires in the rural and in hinterland areas, that we have to put in place a facility to respond to the questions of floods in the country overall. We did have a very important meeting of the Caribbean Association of Firefighters, and I think that provided a vehicular launching point for further collaboration and exchanges of experiences. There has also been an effort and visits in relation to the Brazilian firefighters, particularly those in Roraima State. They have visited. They were kind enough to give us a boost in the Rupununi in relation to fire kits, new types, and we are looking forward to continued collaboration and visits and training exchanges with them. But overall, our risk with fires relate to arson, malicious setting, children left alone playing with matches and lighters, which is a significant problem, and the issue sometimes of certain equipment which may be underrated for the circumstances they're being used for, initiating fires. The Ministry of Home Affairs, going forward in 2024 in a very general way, will continue to work at a strategic level with the agencies in relation to their strategic plans. We are reviewing a number of the strategic plans and see where we can together tweak and improve or reset some of those plans. We look forward to making sure that we support the changes on the soft side in relation to the manning levels, the employees, the personnel, because we recognize that it's not simply the fact of making a big new building, new facilities and so on, but the cultural change, the change of respect, the change which requires empathy in our circumstances has to come along to match. They have to come along to match the physical development of the services. We stand ready to ensure that this happens, we look forward to the continuing cooperation of the services and the service chiefs. Internally, we look forward to, even in the ministry, making sure that we are better prepared to provide the level of service that they require and to pay attention on the issues related to integrity, corruption, and all of those other issues. We still have, and we are happy to have, a fairly young core of staffers, engineers, and others. We are an open and ready organization in relation to what we expect, how we provide service. Our Guyana registration office has been busy marrying people all over the country, and I wish they would marry some more of them to make sure that we have more stable families, more stable circumstances. As I've said before, we have challenges amongst our youth. We have, I think, 17 young people at the Juvenile Holding Center who require a lot of support. And we ourselves have to change our own view of these juveniles and to remind ourselves that they weren't born like that. They were not born a murderer or somebody who stabs up and does terrible things. They were not born like that. And so our remit is to improve their life, their livelihood, their perspectives, and to have a change for their future and their ambitions. One particular area which we were glad again last year to achieve what Mr. Daniel Griffith at the Trafficking in Persons area says Tier 1 from the United States in relation to our efforts in the trafficking in persons issue. We did achieve it again. We look forward to achieving it again this year. We have indeed a challenging issue in relation to Venezuelan migrants and those who may be forced into kinds of activities, persons who may be trafficked. We did have a situation where 4 Venezuelans were trafficked from Brazil into Guyana, and we did have a couple of incarcerations and expulsions, 49 Venezuelan nationals in the prison. But the trafficking in people and persons issues related to Haiti, Cuba, and some other countries are issues which we have to keep working at. And the trafficking persons unit has been working with some of the communities, I think one lately in Rupununi at Letem called Plastic City, to let them have a more survivable, stable livelihood and circumstances rather than the men running off and burglaring and doing other things in the communities and smuggling. One of their issues, but also too, in relation to the issues in the mining camps, and in relation to the Kayamus, and in relation to brothels in Georgetown, which are a constant worry and trouble, and they seem to be divided perspectives of what is the best thing to do with these issues. But our position and our remit in relation to the laws for the country and internationally is that we have to take action to prevent trafficking in persons. And if there's a person who is working, doing whatever, legally or illegally, and his or her passport is kept by someone else, and if there are demands made in relation to them making payments, perhaps for their presence in Guyana and seemingly being supported or moved along the way and perhaps get into the U.S.-Mexican border, wherever, that we have to take action. The law requires it. Guyana law and international law. And moral and ethically, we have the right and we have the responsibility to take action. So more work will be supported in this area. There are lots of threats of victimization, not only for those in Guyana, but in their native countries in relation to those issues. But those are issues which we have to work hard at. I want to, in closing, thank the agencies, our staffers at all levels, including those who spend all years night at the ministry to close off their accounts, our personnel area and all others for your support, for your interest, for your willingness to support us, the top management of the ministry, and again to invite the media to get engaged with us on the questions of doing the right thing in 2025 and beyond, and perhaps being more activists in exposing and explaining the difficulties and the challenges which we find ourselves in relation to our overall question of securing Guyana, of increasing peace in Guyana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Ben. We now open the floor for questions. Please, as I mentioned before, identify yourself and your media house. I recognize Mr. Chase.
Thank you, PS. Two questions, both for Minister Robeson Ben. You said that 5,094.67 kilograms of cocaine were seized by canoe in 2024, 71 cases made. Much of the cocaine belonged to that bust in Matthews Ridge. Can you say why there have been no arrests so far in relation to that matter? And on the issue of extradition, you said 2 persons are expected to be extradited. Can you say if these are Guyanese nationals?
I could be corrected, but I think there were 2 arrests in relation locally. Persons were but arrested, but the investigation still underway. Questions of charges will be dealt with through the DPP's chambers. There were a number of arrests overseas related to that one. I wouldn't say the country or the area right now, but there were a number of arrests made in relation to that matter.
And the extradition matter, please?
Sorry, the extradition matters are both Guyanese who were overseas and involved in serious criminal matters.
Thank you, Minister.
PS, if there's nobody else, I'm ready.
Any others? Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Sharda.
Sharda Bacchus from the newsroom. I have a question for Minister Ben first. Minister, can you please provide full stats on the number of persons who became Guyanese by naturalization for last year? And can you say which countries those persons are coming from? Secondly, if I may, recently Mr. Hicken has been confirmed as the Commissioner of Police. Can you say if any efforts are on the way to confirm the head of the prison service as well as the fire chief?
The fire chief has been confirmed already, and the issues relating to the prison service will be dealt with in due course. Will be dealt with. Since 2023.
If you can please, by show of hand.
Question on nationalization, sorry.
We will provide the statistics.
At the end of the press conference.
I don't think we have it immediately, but we can provide the statistics.
Mr. Chase, again.
Thank you. Question for Commissioner Police. How many police officers have reported to you or any other rank below you that they have been stopped and questioned by U.S. authorities in recent times?
I would just like to say that we're not aware of any such number.
Thank you, Minister. Just to be reminded that all questions posed are to the Minister. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Charlotte. Okay. In relation to the, just get the question here. Has Guyana been asked by Trinidad and Tobago to provide any information on that major fuel tanker story? And if so, what information?
No, I don't think we've been asked to provide any information on fuel tank or whatever, no.
You want to go?
What's the beard? We'll have Dennis Chabral and then Shara Bacchus. Thank you.
Minister Dennis Chabral Demerara, sir, could you give us a little more details about what's going on in the border with Venezuela as regards the political and economic situation and its implications for Guyana? And secondly, did you at any time as minister express any reservations or objections to the recent appointments of any of the deputy police commissioners?
On the last one, it's an astonishing question. Every person who comes up for review, there's always discussions, critique, reviews of it, but no, they have been appointed. And I'm saying no. On the Venezuelan question, I could say that we have been monitoring more recently, still on a 24/7 basis, the situation in Venezuela, particularly over the last 4 or 5 days. There are several sources of information, including our representative in Caracas, and there may be bilateral information, people who have an interest in the issue itself for both countries who have provided us with information. But much of the information is on the screens in YouTube and other places. The important thing is to make some sense of what is happening over there.
Thank you, Minister. Follow up, Dennis Chabral.
Minister, what I'm trying to find out from you is, in relation to what's going on in Venezuela, what are the threats or potential threats Guyana currently faces, and what are you actually seeing or hearing from your monitorings?
Well, I cannot tell you what we are seeing and hearing from our monitors. I would say that the overall threat which relates to our existential issue, one is that we will have perhaps another flood of migrants in desperate circumstances coming from Venezuela. There has been an efflux from Venezuela of Guyanese persons who still live in Venezuela, and if they're forced to leave in fairly rapid circumstances, leave everything behind and come over here, they will be perhaps in more difficult situation than those who came before. So in any event, we want to make sure that we are sufficiently aware so we could respond to any potential issue in a proper way, and that the support could be provided both for those Guyanese who come and also for refugees or migrants from Venezuela who are forced to come to Guyana.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now have Ms. Bacchus, followed by the gentleman at the back in green. Ms. Bacchus.
Minister, just a similar question that I asked earlier. I'm also seeking some stats in relation to how many persons or companies applied for work permits here in Guyana last year, specifically in the oil and gas sector, and which countries they're from. And secondly, there have been a lot of talks about diversity in the Guyana Police Force. So I'm seeking to find out, does this still exist, and can you explain how does it work?
Certainly there is some diversity in all of the forces. The concern has been that it's at a level which should be much enhanced. You would have been perhaps noticing more recently recruits from the hinterland areas becoming partners, becoming policemen and women, both in the fire and the police force. And the prison system is also looking at that. The recruitment process has been modified to a regional one. So the recruitment process starts with accepting, going out to taking persons who may be more familiar with their regional area. And it's a process, it's an issue, a development which is underway, and one which we have great hopes in allowing for more security, better empathy amongst our people when we have a more diverse police force, prison system, fire service. We can provide stats on the companies who have applied for work permits, the overseas companies, yes. Just let me say, while your interest is piqued on that matter, one of the issues and challenges we have is that there's a great demand for skills in the newly developing areas, not only the oil and gas offshore developments, but also the developments which are occurring on land and on the associated developments, lay-down yards, construction, and all of those things. The manpower, or the power, meaning both man and woman power, required for this effort is way beyond the capacity, the skill sets, the numbers of Guyanese who we have available. Indeed, it's heartening to know that a number of Guyanese are coming back into the country to take up the slots, and they are better skilled, but we are the developments in construction, engineering, and all the other things, building trades and so on, which is going on. There has been an explosion of these activities, surprisingly perhaps, but it's here. And so we have to bring in labor and professional skills to get the job done. For when people are talking about the science and engineering required and the vocational and technical skills required for these developments, we don't have them. Recently, we were discussing the new development at Oko West project. They need 1,200 men and women, 1,700 men and women to build the mine, and 1,200 men and women to operate the mine, and perhaps another 3,000 men and women to provide the services and logistics in relation to the operation. For all of these things, we do not have. And so to catch up, there are issues of changing the focus we have in terms of learning at the university and other places to more technical base. We have to, as was said at Labor and the Ministry of Education, issues in relation to IT, technical and vocational skills. We have to work at giving out more apprenticeships in the companies. And we got to get people more attuned into the development demands of the country in relation to extracting and using our natural resources in partnership with other countries and firms. And I would say otherwise, many of the developments that will occur or are occurring now are in Essequibo. And our occupation of Essequibo is a significant issue in relation to existential threat from Venezuela.
Thank you, Minister. The gentleman, lime green shirt.
Yes, good morning. Shamar Musa, Guyana Chronicle. Yeah, Minister, you spoke about the 14% decrease in serious crimes. Can you provide a breakdown of which of the serious crimes, for example, there was a higher reduction of whether it be armed robbery or whatever? That's my first question. And my second question, can you say how many officers were charged in 2024 and what were the offenses?
Thank you. Just let me go back quickly to the previous question on the work permits. From January to December last year, 13,713 work permits were granted, and they related to 25 companies. But we'll get more details for you. We will provide the data split out of the serious crimes. There were crimes, as I suggested, in relation to armed robberies, use of firearms, break and enter and larceny, and the one which is disturbing, but perhaps the explanation is on the question of rape. There is a sense that there's more reporting of it rather than an actual increase, meaning in terms of reportage. So the jury is still out on the question of the increase in rape, but it is one thing which you have to bring greater awareness and focus. If indeed, and we welcome persons coming forward to advise of occurrences so we can get on top of that one and to bring and work with human services and other agencies in relation to the questions of their awareness in relation to rape. And the overall question of abuse, sexual and other things which occurred. But we will get the details of the breakout of the serious crimes and share some soft copy disaggregation of the data.
Thank you, Minister. The question of
We'll get the figure.
We'll
It
get-
will
you
start
get
to
the
be about 15 for. We'll get the figure for you, so we don't make a mistake on it.
Good afternoon, Minister. Shania Williams from Kaiser News. Can you say how many repeat offenders are currently incarcerated? And my second question, you say there are 49 Venezuelans that are incarcerated. Can you say what is the most prominent crimes that they would commit?
They're mostly domestic murders and robberies. We'll get the specifics for you, but they're mostly domestic murders and robberies. Domestic or disorderly murders.
so, is there a follow-up?
No, the repeat offenders.
The statistics.
We have 157 recidivists incarcerated at the moment.
So, three more questions. I recognize Ms. Bacchus and then Mr. Chase right after.
Don't do it. Probably a question for Mr. Hicken, if he can answer. The recent requirement for members of the police force to be equipped with body cameras when interacting with members of the public. I'm trying to find out, does the Guyana Police Force have enough of these equipment and are ranks trained to operate them?
Yeah, so the body cameras, we bought 500. They're being activated and used. The reasons are more or less obvious. We've had situations where there's a questioning of the interaction between the police persons and the public. There have been questions of professional behavior or conduct. There have been a number of, and these have reduced dramatically over the last year, assaults of policemen and women. So it's a move towards engaging and recording and making sure that there's sufficient information to determine one way or the other which is the best approach towards resolving an issue. Yes, they are being trained. In fact, both the prison system and the canoe persons are being outfitted with cameras too. Mm-hmm. 500 were recently acquired. I think there were 200 or 300 the previous year, and more will be acquired as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. Chase.
Thank you,
And then we
please.
have the last.
And just let me say, I keep saying to the public that they have a right to take out their phone and take videos of police or other citizens' behavior. It helps a lot.
Thank you.
Minister.
Minister, could you say what is preventing the holdup of the publication of the police promotion list? And two, I noticed the crime chief is here. Is there anything new the crime chief can tell us regarding the recent kidnappings or the investigation thereof into the recent kidnappings? The promotion list, of course, is still under review and will be released at the appropriate time. The question of the kidnapping, I believe there were 2 charges recently done in relation to the question of that incident. What do you mean review? police promotion list? What kind of review?
The police promotion list is a list that is prepared and has to be reviewed both at the levels of the commanders at the districts and at the Police Service Commission. So that is simply what it is. And it has to match in terms of the numbers who could be placed at various positions with the succession planning of the police force and what is available in terms of positions.
Thank you, Minister. We now have our last question. I recognize Mr. Dennis Chabral.
Minister, through you, can the Commissioner of Police say why is it he opted to be retained, given the fact of this huge multi-million-dollar fraud in the police force under his watch? And secondly, are other officers or other members of the force, besides those who have been charged, are they implicated? And secondly, to you, Minister, what requests have been made for radar and aircraft to assist the police in drug interdiction, and from whom those requests have been made?
The questions of...
Could the police commissioner please answer, Minister? Is it possible?
No, sir.
Okay.
Minister's press conference.
No. The questions of radar and other support for us has been raised with a number of our international partners. And this is a matter which is still under review and discussions. The questions of the issue with the so-called investigations and so on, that is still too under examination. The decisions which have been made so far in relation to it are appropriate as to the status of those investigations. And the chips will fall where they may as it goes along the way.
There's a question directly to the police commissioner. Why is it he opted to be retained, given the fact that the fraud happened under his watch, as well as the cocaine bust?
The question, maybe too, should be posed to me as to why I opted to remain.
Well, please answer them.
And so I believe, and as I said at the last time, unless I'm told that I'm no longer wanted, I believe that I can still contribute to securing our country, increasing peace in our country. The statistics over the years have shown that we have been very successful. There have been a few hurdles and bumps along the road. In very large organizations, just as we have the fire service, it's how many you got? The police is 6,000 plus. The fire service is probably around 1,000 with auxiliaries and others. The prison service is another 400 or 500 or more counting. The CPGs and others are another 3,000 to 6,000 depending on activism at any places. In very large organizations, things happen. You can get to them, you can be aware of them, you can deal with them. But in very large organizations, there are challenges along the ways, issues you have to deal with, the planning and awareness in relation to your strategic plans and resorts to improve services and the agencies. Our other mantra in it is to follow issues of continuous improvement. We speak for the organization, for the individuals, not necessarily in competition with themselves, to strive for continuous personal improvement. That we're not in competition with each other, we synergize. But we're not in competition with each other, we're in competition with ourselves. singularly and collectively. And improvements, if you come from a difficult place, which we have come from in this country, both economically and politically, cultural changes, these are sea changes, large changes, and it will take time to bring ourselves individually and at the level of the agencies to be satisfied with where we ought to be in relation to those changes. There's no magic wand which could occur in relation to changes and improvements which we have to make. But we are improving. Our data, our statistics show that we are having significant improvement. These improvements are unheralded in the experience and the lives of our services, of our agencies. The changes, the developments, the statistical movement in the right directions in spite of the challenges, now physically, individually, organizationally, are unheralded in the Ministry of Home Affairs, in the Guyana Police Force, in the Guyana Fire Service, in the Guyana Prison Service, in the experience and challenges of the CANO, in the GRO, in all the other, in the traffic in persons challenges, in the number of projects our engineers and others have to work at and develop and make happen. And so all along the way, we have to look at ourselves, be aware, be professional, be introspective, and to learn and improve on bad experiences, and to carry the agency, the ministry forward, the services forward, and the country forward, and to provide the environment so that the country can grow by preserving the peace. Our country can grow politically and economically and culturally. That's what we are about, and it will not happen by waving of the magic wand, waving of a chopper or an axe, or even a hammer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, members of the Joint Services, members of media. This brings us to a close of our press conference. Thank you all. Have a good day.